All right, let's talk about this covert narcissist. This is the one that I really can't stand the most, just between you and me, because I had to deal with two of them who actually targeted me. It was horrible. I mean, horrible. I can't even describe how much it really sucked, frankly. And they weren't even people that I was romantically involved with. I mean, one of them was in my business life, and one of them, it was a family member, and it was just horrible. So, this is the problem with these guys, okay? They seem really nice. To the rest of the world, these people are wonderful. They're amazing. People say they're so genuine. They're so kind. They might even think that they're humble. Uh, these are the people that aren't like out there being brash and bragging and like what you think of with the normal garden variety narcissist, right? These are the people that are actually quite the opposite. Sometimes they can seem humble. Sometimes they present themselves as victims. I mean, they might even be sickly or something like that. Sometimes they even tell you straight out that they're depressed. Um, they can sometimes claim to be very spiritual. They sometimes say, that life hasn't given them, a fair deal, a fair shake, or whatever. But when you're around them, even though the rest of the world thinks that they're wonderful, there's just always something that's off. You can just tell that there's just something underneath the surface that's just not right. And you just kind of have a pit in your stomach, and these little things are happening. There's these little red flags, and they're not huge things. It's not like you get with like super toxic people. I mean, these are like little things that they don't seem that horrible, but then it becomes sort of what I call death by a thousand cuts. And when they engage in behaviors against you, a lot of times there's what we call plausible deniability, whereas basically, like, if they get caught doing something, there's a way to explain it away, and that explanation seems plausible. It doesn't seem right, but then you end up kind of like buying it sometimes because you're not really sure what to say. Or people in your world might say, "Oh, I don't think that they meant it that way. I mean, they're so nice. It must have been inadvertent." And they would never do anything that bad. I mean, they're certainly not malicious. Uh, and so when I was dealing with the two that I had to deal with, there were so many signs. And I had to deal with them in these relationships. And by the way, if you want to know more about specifically covert narcissism in relationships, definitely check out my video on that topic. But anyway, there's so many traits really in a lot of ways, but in my experience, the ones that I had to deal with, here are my top 10, the ones that really stood out to me the most. Number one is a very fragile sense of self. I mean, these are the people, they just feel hollow inside when you're around them. They don't, it seems like there's a vacancy. There's something that's not quite right, not quite there. Or they're sort of like chameleons, whoever they're around, that's who they kind of take on that personality of that person. So that's number one. Number two is they're extremely jealous. And you'll find that, that they'll be jealous of other people. Who is that person to have what they have? Or they covet what other people have. They're often very competitive. That was my experience with the two narcissists I had to deal with. I felt like they were constantly trying to one up me or somehow show that they were better than me in some way. Or I just felt like there was this constant competition, which when I'm with my real friends and my real people and the other people in my life, I never have that feeling. Like, we're just supporting each other. It's good. We're having a conversation. But there's this undertone of something going on with the covert narcissist. Number three is this underhanded criticism. And they're really good at it. To be honest with you, I'm not good at this kind of stuff, but they're really good at it. So there's sort of like this, they have this way of sort of like working their their statement in with their criticism. So it's like, oh, I saw that you handled this. Uh, that was great that you handled that. But I noticed that you forgot to do this. I took care of it for you. Like little like cut there, and you're sort of like, what? What? Where did that come from? Right. So underhanded criticism is number three. Number four is triangulation. Those flying monkeys. Covert narcissists love, love them some flying monkeys. Yeah, they love the flying monkeys. They love to get other people involved, to make sure that that the world thinks that they're wonderful. And so if you think there's anything wrong with them, then it's definitely your problem. Or they're either against you, for them. They want you to feel isolated. It's a bullying tactic. It's a weakening tactic. They're trying to destabilize you. They're trying to show you that that they've got more power than you. And remember that narcissists never attach themselves to people who don't have value. No, 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 no. There's no narcissistic supply if you don't have value. They attach themselves to you because you have so much value. That's the crazy head game of this whole thing. Okay. So triangulation is definitely one of the things that I saw regularly. Number five is, oof, I can barely even say this because this is so painful, which is take credit for your ideas. They love to take credit for your ideas. They love to watch you do everything. You end up doing everything, then they take credit for the ideas. But they'll step up if people are watching. So if they lay back and let you do everything, unless somebody's watching, then they'll step up and make sure it looks like they're doing something. And one of the things in this kind of taking credit thing that is sort of kind of related is that they constantly are staring at you and studying you because they're trying to figure out how to sort of almost like be you. There's this weird adulation thing going on with them as well while they're devaluing you. And if you want to know more about why narcissists stare at you, definitely check out my video on that. It's so creepy and weird. The next thing is that they withhold. They'll withhold information, they'll withhold compliments, they'll withhold praise, they'll withhold anything that could potentially give you something that they're now not going to have, or they can't really share. I mean, their scarcity mentality at its like most extreme. So even if they give you the information to have something else that they have, like, you know the same bed sheets that they have or something, and now you're going to be on an equal footing, they cannot do that. So they withhold information, they withhold praise, they can't have you be equal to or potentially better than them, so they withhold. Next thing is creating drama. Oh, I mean, they create drama in so many different ways by roping people in, like, we talked about the flying monkeys. They also like to drop little bits of gossip to people, which will maybe pit people against each other or pit people against you, something like that. And sometimes the really good ones are really good at packaging up these little bits of gossip to make it look like care or concern. So concerned about her. She had really too much to drink at the party last night. I wonder what's going on with that. Something like that. Or they present as the victim. I just don't know why she won't talk to me anymore. I was so good to her. I, you know, I or I can't believe that this is happening after I did so much for them. Something like that. They're presenting as the victim to try to get flying monkeys to think that, you know, you did something to them in some way. Okay. And the next one is, oh, this is one of their faves. They covert narcs love to be passive aggressive. One of their absolute go-to in their bag of tricks, they will do things that they said that they didn't. They will not do things that they say they're going to do, and then you have to like kind of like follow up with them and find out what's going on with that. And then they might even try to gaslight you. Oh, we never had that conversation. You never said that. And then if you try to call them out, or you actually do catch them, then they suddenly become the victim. Oh, my life is a mess, and oh, I can't believe you're saying this to me, and I've been so wonderful, or something like that. So that's another way of being passive aggressive. Another way is, what we talked about earlier, that underhanded criticism, that those backhanded compliments, um, or a refusal to communicate at all. That's another way of being passive aggressive. So I want to know if any of you have seen any of these things in your relationships. And if you have, give me a totally in the comments below. All right. So the next one is not being protective. They definitely do not have your back. If something happens to you, sometimes they might even take the other person's side, and you're kind of wondering why they're taking the other person's side. And they'll say, oh, no, I'm not taking their side, and, whatever. But you just feel like they don't have your back. And the last one is hoovering. And this is definitely something that I experienced with the two covert narcs I had to deal with as well. You feel like they're withdrawing from you. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so once you start to go, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm tired of being treated this way. I'm tired of doing everything. I'm tired of all these red flags. I'm tired of the death by 1,000 cuts. Blah, blah, blah. I'm out of here. They start to feel you walking or leaving or pulling back in some way. Then all of a sudden, they'll rush in and do the things that they were supposed to do in the first place, which actually makes it worse, because now you're like, oh, so you did know what you were supposed to be doing, but you just didn't. But they're very careful then to only do just as much as they need to, or hoover or love bomb, or whatever they need to do to get you off of your idea that their supply is going to walk out the door. And then they'll go back to their ways. So they just do the bare minimum, but they do hoover to come back and try to get you to forget about whatever it is that you were going to do, leave or call them out or whatever. So, but again, it's like just the bare minimum, just enough to get you back where they want you to be. So 11 ways to recognize a covert narcissist. I personally have had to deal with two covert narcissists who have targeted me in my personal life, and they are the worst, the absolute worst. Let me tell you, I think they're the worst because you can't spot them very easily. The grandiose narcissists are the ones that are out there bragging all the time. They're the ones telling you, oh, I'm so great, blah, blah, blah. The covert narcissists are the ones that look so kind and so sweet, and everybody thinks they're so wonderful. And so they save themselves for their actual target. And the things that they do are so under the radar that when you go to tell people about it, people are like, well, that doesn't seem so bad. Or I don't know, maybe that was so inadvertent, I mean, because they're really so nice. So when I was dealing with them, it actually makes you even seem more crazy, because people are looking at you like, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem so bad. And it's absolutely maddening. It literally is like death by 1,000 cuts, or like that water dripping on your head. And you really do feel like you're going crazy. So it's absolutely horrible. So, one of the ways, I'm going to go through 11 ways to recognize a covert narcissist. By the time we're done here, you're going to really know whether or not you're dealing with a covert narcissist in your life. So, the first way that you can recognize a covert narcissist is that they are passive aggressive. And what I mean by that is that they don't right in your face do things. So, for example, they'll say that they're going to do something and then they just don't do it. And you're like wondering why they didn't do it. And you kind of ask them about it. And they'll just sort of not have a conversation with you about it, or it just doesn't come up, or they say that they're going to ask about it and then they just don't. And then you find yourself, should I bring it up or should I not? Or they will just put their names on things and then you wonder why they did that, and you have to kind of have a conversation about it. They're not aggressive to your face. They do things where you're kind of feeling, especially if you are a good person, a kind person, where you find yourself, should I bring it up, should I not bring it up? And it's very frustrating, very maddening. So that's number one, they're passive aggressive. Number two is that they are subtly competitive. So, you notice that they got something better than you, or they'll say, they're sicker than you, or they have something that whatever you have, they have more, they have better, but it's always sort of with a smile. And it's always like this undercurrent of it. It's not enough to really say something about, but there's always sort of this undercurrent. But to your face, they're so nice to you all the time. But there's this undercurrent of this feeling. But yet you are kind of wondering, is there something going on? Because to your face, they're so nice to you all the time. So that's number two. Number three is withholding. They withhold things from you. They don't tell you about something that you're wondering about, information. They don't tell you information. And then all of a sudden you're like, why didn't they tell me about that? And it's like weird things too, something that might have even sort of benefited the business, for example, like that really could have benefited both of you, but they just are so subtly competitive that they just don't want you to even have it either. So withholding information, withholding anything that could potentially benefit you. They're such in scarcity mentality, scarcity mode all of the time that they're withholding information or anything that could potentially benefit you, or information that you might want to have. They just don't tell you. So withholding, that's number three way that you could recognize a covert narcissist or a sign of a covert narcissist. Number four way that you can recognize a covert narcissist is that they're extremely insecure. And here's the thing that's kind of interesting about a covert narcissist is that they may even tell you that they're insecure. They may even tell you about the way they feel about things, because they do tend to be sort of downtrodden. They may even tell you that life has dealt them a bad hand, that life isn't fair to them. Sometimes with covert narcissists, they will tell you that life hasn't been good to them or something like that, because sometimes they do sort of have a victim mentality about them, because they do sort of play on people's guilt. Sometimes you'll see that with covert narcissists as well. So that's number four. Number five is they are often prone to depression or anxiety. And you will often hear them say that. The couple of covert narcissists that I have had to deal with, they actually straight up said, I've had to deal with depression. I have a therapist. And, they'll tell you, I've had to deal with that. But, again, sometimes they're playing on your sympathies, and they're playing on them being a victim or something like that. So that is another way that you can recognize a covert narcissist. Number 6 way that you can recognize a covert narcissist is that they often have grandiose fantasies. In fact, one of the covert narcissists that I used to have to deal with would say she wanted to dominate the world or something like that. It wasn't about helping people necessarily, it was about world domination. But yet she wasn't really prepared to do the work to have world domination. She really just wanted to like attach herself to people who were going to do the work. Because a lot of times you'll see that narcissists are inherently lazy. They really don't want to do the work. And, again, that's sort of the passive aggressive, going back to the number one sign of a covert narcissist. A lot of times they'll say that they're going to do something and then they just don't do the work. And that was one of the things that I saw in the covert narcissist that I was dealing with, is that they would say that they were going to do the work and then they would not do the work. And then, you would ask them about it and they would just, lie about it and say they were working on it and then they weren't working on it or something like that. And it's sort of like this passive aggressive thing, like you can't tell me what to do kind of a thing. And that was, sort of the passive aggressive thing. But that's number 6 sign or way to recognize a covert narcissist is these grandiose fantasies that they have, which is really part of any sort of narcissist. Because remember that even though they are covert narcissists, they are in fact narcissists, which, all narcissists have these grandiose fantasies about themselves. And by the way, if you want to know more about how covert narcissists interact in relationships, I do have a whole video on covert narcissism in relationships, which I highly recommend that you definitely check out. And they are definitely so sneaky. It's just so sick and so gross and so difficult to deal with. I mean, it really, really makes you crazy and makes you feel like you're crazy. It really does eventually suck the life out of you and makes you feel like you're going nuts. And I remember feeling like, oh, like this person is a leech. Like I felt like it was like a leech, like literally draining the life out of me. This is before I had the term energy vampire in my vernacular. Like I didn't even know that term before, I used to say leech, So, I mean, if you agree with me, like they're just like total energy vampires, just put energy vampire in the comments because they're just total energy vampires. All right. So that's number 6. Number 7 is they have a tendency to definitely hold grudges. I mean, they hold grudges forever. I mean, it's just because they have no sense of self, just the same as all narcissists. They just don't have that sense of self. And, when you don't have a sense of self, you definitely have a tendency to hold grudges because you don't have that sense of self. So, you want to get all of your value from external sources like that. So that's the number 7 way to recognize a covert narcissist. The 8th way that you can recognize a covert narcissist is that you are envious or jealous. When I was dealing with a covert narcissist is, when something good would happen with me, I got a really great television gig or something like that. Then the covert narcissists in my life would be like, oh, that's so great for you. Like you could definitely tell like they weren't happy for me. They outwardly pretend to be happy. They try to be happy, but they're really not because they're just so jealous. They're so envious. But they try to be outwardly happy, but they're really secretly very, very envious, very, very jealous people. So that's the 8th way that you can recognize a covert narcissist. The 9th way that you can recognize a covert narcissist is fake empathy. So, one of the things that they do is they just show up wherever empathy can be shown up. So, one of the things that I would see with some covert narcissists that I was dealing with is that, if somebody were sick, they would just show up there right in the middle of things with, the baskets of food or whatever, because there is an opportunity to get attention for themselves and look at me, look at how wonderful I am. This opportunity to show what a great person I am, and the person who can sit right at the bedside and be right in the middle of it and demonstrate that I am such a wonderful person and everybody else is so not a wonderful person. It's sort of this fake empathy, though, because if there's not a show about it, if there's nobody to be seeing this person displaying all the empathy, then they don't bother. So it's only if there are certain people around to actually see them displaying this particular empathy, and only if it will serve them in certain circles. It's definitely strategic in nature. So it's kind of fake empathy, and it's very much strategic or tactical when needed. So fake empathy is the ninth way that you can recognize a covert narcissist. Number 10 way that you can recognize a covert narcissist is gaslighting. Gaslighting is definitely a personal favorite of all narcissists, but I think that covert narcissists are actually even better at it than any narcissist, frankly. I would see this especially with the covert narcissists that I dealt with, frankly, because they would be particularly good at spinning yarns. They take shreds of truth or kernels of truth and spin it into, well, we talked about that. Don't you remember? Like they would take little pieces of it and then spin it into whatever they would want it to be. So, go and do whatever it is that they would want to do. And you'd be over there going, what the hell do you think you're doing? And they would be like, oh, well, we talked about that. We never talked about you doing that. But they would take like a little piece of what you talked about and then go and do whatever they wanted. And then they would refer back to it. They would take the piece of it that they would want and refer back to it and do whatever they wanted with that little piece of what you talked about. But, make it seem like you had talked about that whole entire part. But that you didn't. So that's gaslighting. They're really, really good at it. And because they seem to the rest of the world as such good people, so kind, oh my goodness, but look at what they did for this person who had cancer. They stood by their side and they did all these things. So to the rest of the world, since they're so nice and they're so kind, they kind of get away with a whole lot more. It's so maddening in a lot of ways. So that's number 10 is gaslighting. And number 11 is their flying monkeys. They love their flying monkeys. They love to use those flying monkeys. So flying monkeys are third parties that they use to line up as their like army of people to have them on their side, to let you think that these people believe their lies, believe their agendas, believe that everyone else is thinking what they think, everyone else thinks that they're wonderful, that you're not, that you feel more isolated, more alone. It's really a form of bullying in a way. But here's the thing that I do remind people about flying monkeys, and that is that a lot of times the flying monkeys really don't even realize that they're being lined up against you. They're being love bombed by that person as well. They're being charmed by that person. They don't know what's going on. They don't realize that that person has this agenda. They just think that person is nice. They're not in the inner circle a lot of times, and they don't see what's happening. They're not being necessarily targeted by that person. So they don't see that passive aggression. They don't necessarily see that subtle competition. They don't see the covert narcissism in that person a lot of times. They just see the good side a lot of times. So it's kind of hard to tell a lot of times if that flying monkey or those flying monkeys actually know what's going on. I don't know. But the best thing for you to do is get the hell out of there and never look back. That's for sure. Yeah. The reason I am on this mission is because I have had to deal with covert narcissists, the subject of today's video. I've had to deal with them in a business setting, one of them in a business setting, and one in my extended family. I had never even heard the term covert narcissist before until somebody pointed it out to me. And I remember when we were having this conversation, the person who pointed it out to us pointed it out to my husband and me first, and they were like, oh, that person, that family member that you're dealing with is a covert narcissist. And I remember I was like, covert narcissist, I never even heard that term before, but I remember thinking, oh, I don't think she's a narcissist. I mean, a narcissist to me was like a boastful, bragging, super egotistical, usually a male. Like to me, it was always a male. I mean, it had never occurred to me, number one, that a narcissist could be a female. And by the way, the person who was calling this person a narcissist happened to be a psychologist. I was like, I don't think she's a narcissist. Pretty sure she's just like really insecure. And he was like, okay, you know what? Let it be a hypothesis. And if I'm wrong, I guess you'll know it. And if I'm right, you'll know it too. The facts and circumstances will bear it out. And of course, he was 100% right. But as time went on and I started to read and learn much more about it, I started to really figure it out. And so, there's so much that goes into a covert narcissist. But, my hypothesis is that I think women do tend to be more the covert kind because women want to be more under the radar. They tend to want to be, they want to look nice, they want to look kind. I mean, but I don't know. I think that there are a lot of male covert narcissists too. They're the ones that nobody suspects. Like the world thinks that they're so fantastic, they're so charismatic, the world thinks they're wonderful. So, anyway, here are some strange behaviors of covert narcissists. I mean, number one is that they're super passive aggressive. Their words do not match their actions. So they're like super kind and "Well, absolutely, I will do that for you. Absolutely. I will get right back to you on that. And then you don't hear from them. Or, I definitely want to make sure that you were taken care of. And then they don't. And so you're left like so confused all the time. And do I force them on that? Do I ask them about that? And does this make me a bad person because they're so nice? And then here you are, the one like, am I being passive aggressive? Am I being the one that's a problem? It seems very strange because they seem so nice. So it's kind of a strange behavior because they seem so nice, but it's actually not strange if you get to know who they are as a covert narcissist. So that's number one. Number two is they value the opinions of strangers over family. I mean, and this is something that my husband and I have seen it with the covert narcissist that we've had to deal with in our family situation. This particular person who shall not be named definitely values the opinions of strangers over family. It can be painful unless you realize and just accept that that's who they are, that they are narcissists. And that's what narcissists do. They are seeking that external praise, they're seeking that narcissistic supply. And that's the very strange thing about narcissists. They kind of take for granted the opinions or the supply that they're getting within their inner circle. They don't really care about the supply that they already have. That's just sort of a given. They want the supply that they're getting externally. For some reason, that means more to them than the supply or the validation that they can get from the people who actually love them, from the people who actually care about them or actually value them. They prefer to get it from other people that they don't even know. But that's how it is. It doesn't really make any sense, but that is very strange. And so that's number two. Number three, and I will never really get over number three, to be honest with you. Both of the covert narcissists that I had to deal with did this with me, and I found it very odd, very weird, very super creepy. And that is that they stare at you. I actually did a whole video on this just because I really couldn't stand it. My whole video was called Why the Narcissist is Always Watching You. Both of the narcissists I had to deal with, I would find like would be staring at me, watching me. They stalk your social media, they check out what you're doing. I would find that they would like copy me, watch what I was wearing, copy that. And some people would be like, who don't understand narcissism, they'd be like, oh, but that's so flattering, that's so nice that they would like want to be like you or something. But no, like those of you who understand narcissism, like that it's not flattering. It's like the creepy kind. Actually, recently I had dinner with another couple who happened to let me know that one of the narcissists that I had to deal with that I've completely cut out of my life, not the family member one, but the other one, let me know that there was like some like buddy who was in touch with somebody else that, sort of like this fringe sort of in touch, that like there's that like narcissist that's still like trying to poke their head through to try to get through the boundaries that I've created. I mean, very sad. But from my own growth perspective, I was like, you know what? I don't really feel any emotion about it. So it was actually good. It was like a little test for me because when I heard about it, I was like, that is so pathetic. I actually found myself feeling like nothing. So I was glad about that. So that's number three. Number four is they're super weird about gift giving. They kind of like don't really want to give gifts. They like, oh, here you go. And there's like ties against it. They don't really like to give gifts. I do have a video on that too, by the way, if you want to check it out. But narcissists, there's always like strings. They don't like to give gifts, really. There's always something involved with the gifts. So that's number four. Number five is they're chameleons, like they're kind of one way with one group and one way with another group and one way with this person and another way with another person. Because they whatever color they are with this person, they might be a different color with a different person because they don't have a sense of self, right? Because they're a narcissist. So that's number five. Number six. This is actually another little sore spot for me because this was something I had to deal with in my business setting kind of situation. Anyway, they definitely take credit for your ideas. Yep, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Did not like that, but they do that. They definitely like to take credit for your ideas because they don't have any ideas of their own. Yes. because, they are energy vampires. That's part of what they do. They suck the energy out of you. And if you know this to be true, give me an energy vampires in the comments below. Come on, say it with me. Energy vampires. Yes, they are. All right. And number seven, this is another little catchy little tune that the coverts like to play. This is another little strange behavior of theirs, which is they act like they're strong. I'm so strong. I'm so good. But then they also like to play the victim. Very strange, very weird. They want to play like they're strong, they're so good, but then they also, oh, they played me. I can't believe they did that to me. I'm so weak. The whole passive aggressive thing, part of the whole covert thing. I'm so nice, but I'm also, you know, like again, knives under me, so warm over here, but there's ice in my blood. Yes, indeed. So, anyway, those are the seven top strange behaviors of covert narcissists. The one that I personally detest the most because I've had to deal with them. Now, let's talk about this covert, passive aggressive narcissist. I never even heard of such a thing until I actually became I would say, victim, target, survivor. I prefer survivor actually, but initially you are their target and then you kind of become their victim, and then hopefully you can escape and become a survivor and live to talk about it. And for me, having been a seasoned attorney, I'm a very successful attorney. I've been recognized by any you know valid, credible source that recognizes accomplishments of attorneys. I've been a divorce attorney for 20 years or more, and very, what I would say, confident, tough. So I wouldn't have expected to have become the target, victim, survivor of a covert narcissist, but I actually have two two of them that I had to get rid of fairly recently in my life. And so it's I while I have programs on how to negotiate with a narcissist, I've had to make sure that I incorporate in there how to deal with a covert passive aggressive narcissist, because these are the most stealth ones. These are the most toxic in a lot of ways because they don't look like narcissists. So there's really three types of narcissists. The first one would be your grandiose narcissist. That's your run of the mill narcissist, the one that we're used to seeing, the kind that most people think of when they think of narcissists, the one that goes around telling everybody how great they are, has no problem boasting about their accomplishments or thinking that they're the best one, and they tell everybody and everybody knows that that's what they think. And that's kind of your run of the mill normal narcissist. And then there is what we call the malignant narcissist, which is kind of like the grandiose narcissist, but like on steroids. It's kind of like the Darth Vader of narcissists. Those are the ones that have a propensity for stalking or violence or threats of violence, things like that, to intimidate people into doing what they want. I mean, all narcissists have zero sense of self. They're like the Easter chocolate bunny that has like is totally hollow inside. That's what's going on with the narcissist. They have no inner sense of self. They have no inner um, self-esteem or self-worth. They actually are the most insecure of all people in the world. And so those of us who are empaths, they are attracted to narcissists and narcissists are attracted to them. It's this crazy sort of symbiotic, very um, lethal attraction that both have for each other, because empaths naturally want to help people, and they see that narcissists have that inner sense of insecurity, that deep sense of insecurity. And narcissists naturally want to be with people that have qualities that they wish that they had, or that they want other people to think that they have, or that they admire in some way, something like that. And so they do gravitate toward each other. And with covert passive aggressive narcissists, it's even worse, because covert passive aggressive narcissists are actually um, the ones that will straight out tell you that they have difficulty with depression, or or feeling good about themselves. They'll straight up say that. They often appear to be victims of things. They want to appear to be victims. A lot of times they have a lot of illnesses, or they're sick, so that people feel sorry for them. The world just isn't fair, doesn't give them what they want or whatever. But they also appear to be very charming, very nice, like the nicest people in the world. A really huge eye-opening book for me was this book right here by Debbie Mirza. It's called The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, I would definitely make sure to grab it. I will put a link to the book below here in my notes on the video. Definitely check it out. It was very eye-opening for me. And when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, these people that have been in my life, it could be a book written about them. Like they are it exactly. So I want to read for you, because I don't have the list memorized. So I just want to read for you some of the characteristics that that Debbie Mirza says that covert passive aggressive narcissists have. They do not have a strong sense of self. They have silent rage, lying, hoovering, constant criticism, jealousy. They project their own issues onto you. Their words don't match their actions. They are emotionally disconnected. They have flying monkeys, which are, it's like a triangulation move to try to get people in your world to line up against them, or with them against you. And they get them to believe all their lies about how horrible you are. Or they might just get them on their side to think that they're a wonderful person. So therefore, if you cross this person, then there definitely must be something wrong with you because they're so nice. Um, they take credit for your ideas. They withhold praise and recognition. They sabotage birthdays, holidays, vacations, and meaningful dates. They belittle you, teach you lessons. They're self-focused, emotionally immature, always strings attached, use people. They're dizzying conversationalists, so easy to get sucked in. They create drama. They don't make love, they take it. They're not protective. They create stories in their head. They have no desire to actually know you. They have no interest in making this a great relationship. They use control and manipulation. So those are definitely all characteristics that I saw in the two covert passive aggressive narcissists that I had to deal with in my life. I'm sure that I have others, but those are the two that actually became fixated with me and doing things, to hurt me. And what's interesting is that they have this kind of weird fixation, like they absolutely idolize you in a lot of ways, but then they also are trying to hurt you and do passive aggressive things to you. It's a very strange world of insanity that, you just got to get yourself out of as fast as possible if you can. And if you can't, you definitely want to create boundaries that are really, really strict, because, these people are actually narcissists. All narcissists don't respect boundaries. You're supposed to respect theirs. They don't have to respect yours. That's how that goes. There are 3 phases to a relationship with a covert passive aggressive narcissist, or any narcissist. And that is the love bombing phase, where they start off with how great you are, you're so beautiful, everything is amazing. They line themselves up to look like they're so perfect for you. They want you to think that they're incredible in the beginning, that everything about them is just perfect, where you're thinking, wow, is this person even real? This is amazing. And then the next phase is where they start to devalue you. And with a passive aggressive narcissist, this is where you start to see these little things, and they're just small enough. They're so good at doing these little things that you know are not right and you know are meant to do something to you. But the rest of the world, if you tell them about it, they would go, well, that doesn't seem so bad. I don't know. Maybe it was a mistake. Oh, that seems inadvertent, because they're so nice. So it has to be an error. Um, or they gaslight you, but it's in very, very subtle ways, where they'll say, they'll do something completely contrary to what you agreed on, or to or what you would think that they should do, or whatever. And when you call them out on it, they go, oh, we had that conversation. You agreed to that. And you never had that conversation. Or they say something like, oh, we, I thought you said that that was okay, or something like that. And you know that that just never happened. And so they try to make you think that you're crazy. But when you tell other people about it, they go, oh, that must have been inadvertent. One of the things that I've seen with covert passive aggressive narcissists is like with money, where money will end up being deposited into the wrong account, and they go, oh, I didn't realize I did that. I'll correct it. And then they never do. And so then you end up having to go back to ask them about it. But then when you tell people about it, they go, well, it seems inadvertent, because the person is so nice and they're such a good person. They would never do anything like take money, things like that. And, so it goes on and on. And so during the devalue phase, you're getting this little drip, drip, drip on your head of, of things that are starting to make you think you're crazy, because the whole rest of the world does think that this person is so nice. One of the examples that Debbie Mirza gives in her book is about a husband who would go into a Starbucks or something and get himself a coffee, and he would ask the wife if she wanted anything, and she would always say yes, and she would tell him what she wanted. And he would always come back out and say, oh, I forgot to get yours, when she would bring it up. And then he wouldn't even go back in to get it. Like, he would just drive away. Little things like that that are just like, well, do you really break up a relationship over that? Well, it doesn't seem like so bad. Maybe I'm just being selfish, things like that. And especially if you're an empath, which remember I said they gravitate toward, you're going to want to be as giving as possible. And narcissists just want to take as much as possible. So, and remember, to a narcissist, your only value is whatever value you bring to them, because they need an endless amount of what we call narcissist supply. And supply is whatever thing of value you can bring to them. It might be compliments, it might be making them look good, it might be helping them, with all of their problems. It may be financial gain. It may be that just being associated with you gives them a higher boost in status, or whatever. So, but if you take away that value from the narcissist, then your value is gone as well. And in fact, when you try to end a relationship with a narcissist who, whether it's a romantic relationship, a business relationship, or, friend, neighbor, employer, whatever, they're going to want to get you first, especially because you may know things about them that actually would make them vulnerable. So they're going to make a lot of noise and go absolutely berserk. So you got to be ready for that, because they're going to want to make everybody else think that you're the bad one for leaving. Even if they leave you, to be honest, they don't want to be seen as, oh, I left them because I'm a bad person, or I wanted to be with somebody else. They've got to make it about you. And so you've got to steel yourself. You got to be ready that whatever you say, do, whatever is going to be manipulated. They're going to lie, cheat. In my program on how to negotiate with a narcissist, I actually have a list of 30 things that they will do. And I actually break them out by the type of narcissist and the types of behavior they do in a breakup. But just know that you're going to be in for it. But remember that this is actually the most fragile personality. They're like the bully on the playground that when you fight back, they run away. So you just got to find that point and create enough strategy and leverage to get them to the point where they will be willing to back down and run away and just find somebody else, because it's not worth their trouble to be in your space anymore. And you're not giving them any value. So plus, if you're going to make them look bad, then, it's time to move on as far as they're concerned.
All right. So you are getting ready to deal with a narcissist, and, you're in the middle of drama, trauma, and chaos for sure. And you can't even think straight half the time because you're under siege. That's what happens when you go into the discard phase of a narcissistic relationship. Remember, there's the love bombing, then there's the devaluing, then there's the discarding. And if you want to know more about those 3 phases, definitely check out my videos on each one of those topics. But when you're in that discard phase, that's when you start to see the birth of the smear campaign, and all these things are coming at you at once. And when you are in that phase, the narcissist basically wants to take you down. They want to get you before you get them. So you're going to start to see them doing things. They're going to start lining up their flying monkeys. They're going to, meaning these third parties. What flying monkeys are was a reference to the Wizard of Oz. And the Wicked Witch had her flying monkeys, and these people who just sort of like sat on the side of the evil person and just kind of went along and didn't really realize what was going on. And that's what flying monkeys actually really are. I mean, they're people that the narcissist is lined up to be on their side or against you. And in their perfect world, both, right? On their side and against you, which is perfect for them. And they want you to feel like you are ganged up on. They want you to feel like you are isolated, that you are out of it, that you're excluded, that there's nothing more for you, because they want you to be suffering. I've actually had somebody who said, I think that he wants me to kill myself. That's not the case, actually, because if you did that, then they wouldn't have any more narcissistic supply. What they really want is to just make you miserable. They get off on that. It's totally sick. I mean, that's what it is for them. They actually kind of get a high out of making people miserable. And that's why they drag out litigation. That's why the negotiation process takes so long. I have a private Facebook group, which, by the way, you are certainly welcome to join. It's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. And I did a survey in there and asked people, how long did your litigation take? How much did it cost you? And do you know that a huge percentage of people said it cost more than $100,000 and it took more than 3 years? Why do you think that is? Because you are dealing with a narcissist in negotiation at that point. And what's driving them? It's not to come to a nice resolution. It's not even to win. No. Newsflash for you. A narcissist is not in it just to win. They are in it to make you miserable, to devalue you, to squash you, to hurt you before you hurt them, to make sure that everybody knows that whatever happened with the relationship was your fault and that they're the perfect ones and that you're the villain. They might even call you the narcissist. You never know, but that's what's going on. So when you are in this entire process of negotiation, what are some signs of malicious intent? one of the very first big, huge, honking red, arrows should be that they constantly move the goalposts. And why do they constantly move goalposts? Well, if you want to know more about that, you should definitely check out my video on why narcissists constantly move goalposts. But why do they do that? They do that because they enjoy the process of making you squirm, manipulating you, intimidating you, scaring you, dragging it out. And so what does moving the goalpost mean? It means that you will get some kind of an offer from them. And even if you go back and you say, I'll take exactly your offer, word for word, every single thing that you put in your offer, I accept. They'll come back with, sorry, that's no longer available. Or it's available, but I'm adding this. Or I'm taking away that. And why do they do that? They do that because it drives you crazy, because it allows them to continue to lead you around by the nose. It's like a little ring in your nose that they're leading you around by. They love it. And they love seeing you squirm, and they love asserting that control over you. So that's a huge red flag that you're dealing with someone who has malicious intent, is constantly moving the goalposts. And if you think that what they're doing is so sick, give me a so sick in the comments. The second big red flag that you know that you're dealing with somebody who has malicious intent in a negotiation is you see these ultimatums like right from the beginning. I just recently had this. I was representing a woman in a divorce, and her very malignant narcissistic husband was coming in to negotiate. We had a mediation set up, and he comes in and he starts right off with, I want my dogs back. Now, these dogs that he wasn't taking care of. They were starving, and his adult daughter went and got the dogs and brought them to her house and refused to give them to him. This wasn't even anything that my client had anything to do with, other than the fact that she's on better terms with the daughter than he is. And he starts off the mediation saying, I'm not doing anything today until I get my dogs back. I want the dogs. Go get the dogs. Go bring them to me. And everybody's supposed to scatter around and do exactly what he wants. He really was trying to show the world, everybody there, that he's in charge, that this is how this is going to go. I'm in charge of the day. And so he picked something that was quite ridiculous and made everybody squirm about it. And here's the mediator over talking to us and saying, what can you do about the dogs? And my client's on the phone with the daughter. Can you get the dogs? Can you do something with the dogs? And the daughter's like, I'm not giving up the dogs. So here we spent the first hour and a half of the mediation not even talking about anything that has to do with the divorce. There's a very huge red flag of somebody who had malicious intent. His intent was to control. His intent was not to come to a peaceful and reasonable resolution of that case. So that's another huge red flag, is that you see these ultimatums happening right away. And a third red flag that somebody has malicious intent is that they're not actually coming to the table. They're not trying to mediate at all. They just are constantly dragging out the case, more discovery, sending out motions, doing all these things, but you can't get them to actually come to the table and have a conversation with you about resolving the case or the issue, whatever it is. You can't, what is it that you want? They don't give you an offer. They just completely avoid the entire conversation. There's another example of malicious intent.
Let's talk about why those narcissists come back. Well, to understand that, you first have to understand why they do anything that they do. Okay, so narcissists are actually, the most insecure people on the planet for sure. They have no sense of self, they have no inner sense of self. It's a very scarcity mentality. If I give anything up, then I cease to exist. I'm shattered. Like it's a very precarious situation on what's going on there. And I often liken it to the chocolate Easter bunnies that you get that are hollow inside. Like they look pretty on the outside, but there's nothing going on the inside. And on top of that, you know how those hollow Easter bunnies are very fragile, like you just poke them a little bit and they break. That's kind of how it is with narcissists, which is why they're very easily slighted, why they hear tones in your voice, like dogs hear whistles, like they think you're being sarcastic or something. Like there's no tone whatsoever, but they hear a tone. And so that's why they're very easily slighted, because they have a very fragile sense of self. So they have to derive all of their value from the external world in the form of compliments and adulation and people doing things for them and feeling that value from the outside all the time. And if they're not going to get it from you in the form of good things like that, then they're going to make sure they get it from you in other ways as well, which is devaluing you, debasing you, treating you poorly, intimidating you, projecting, deflecting, manipulation, constant lying, all that sort of thing. And in a litigation matter, whether it's a divorce or whatever, it's even worse, because once you are no longer for them, they for sure think you're just against them. And now you become public enemy number one, because they want to make sure that they take you down before you have a chance to say anything about them. So that's what's going on. And it's all because of narcissistic supply. They are 100% driven by narcissistic supply. If you want to know more about that, definitely check out my video on that topic. But that's what's really going on. And so they'll take it in any form that they can get it. And they want to make sure they continue to get supply from as many sources as they possibly can. And so even if they're onto a new form of supply, or what they perceive as maybe even a better form, somebody who's better looking, more prestigious, has more to offer, is more high profile, it has more reach, more impact, whatever reason it is that they may be onto this new form of supply, they don't want to let go of the supply that they have in you as well. They really want to have as much supply as they possibly can. It's like a vulture that is trying to pick the little bits left of a carcass, but they see another good one over there and they want to have that one too, but they definitely don't want to let go of this one over here. They want to have, suck as much blood out of everything as they can. So, I mean, they're supply whores. And in a way, it's their oxygen, it's their lifeblood, it's their food. If they're not going to get it from you, then they're going to slither down the road and look for it somewhere else, because they have to. They're predators in that sense. So, why do they come back? Well, because they want supply. Because if there's still supply to be had, they'll be back. So sometimes they start off with the Hoover, just, you haven't spoken to them in 2 years or something. And now all of a sudden you get that little ping in your DM or whatever saying, hey, how you doing? And, they're testing the waters. So that's the first reason, to Hoover, to test the waters, to see if there's something there, to, some supply to be had. Can they get you back into their web? Is there a way to start getting supply out of you again? So that's the first reason. The second reason is to assert control over you again, to let you know they haven't forgotten you. They're still watching. Don't think that you just were able to move on. So to taunt you, to haunt you, to taunt and haunt. I just made that up, to assert that control over you and let you know that they haven't forgotten. So that goes into my next one, which is to taunt you, to upset you, to get a rise out of you because they get off on that stuff. I mean, I have a whole video, by the way, on why narcissists try to provoke you. So definitely check that out. But that's, something else that they do is they want to taunt you, they want to provoke you. And by the way, if you've seen any of these, give me a totally in the comments below that you've totally seen this. I know you have. I know you have. So I should see lots of totallys below because I know we've all seen this. You think you might have escaped and you might be finally at, and there they back are again, trying to like be in your face again. And so they want to taunt you and upset you. And the last reason that they come back is to punish you, to let you know, like, how dare you try to move on? How dare you say goodbye to me? Like just to punish you and for leaving them, for walking away. So here's what I want you to do about it. I want you to do nothing. I want you to see it as if it's a stranger, like, oh, who the hell is that? Like beads off a duck's back, like water off a duck's back, how that just like kind of flicks off. That's what I want you to do. If you have managed to finally walk away and be free of this crazy person in your life, don't look back. Don't take the bait. They haven't changed. It's not going to be any better. You know how, like, with people who are alcoholics, like, if they just take one drink, they're right back to wherever it was that they were when they left off from drinking. It's the same thing. You'll be right back where you were within you know, a minute. So just continue to have them wiped from the CPU of your life, like as if they never existed. That's the best thing. If you can almost even like forget their name, even better, and ignore the taunt and the haunt. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to use that again. All right. So let's talk about what it takes to actually become powerful against narcissists and really find out what their weak spots are. They do have at least 6 weak spots, and we're going to talk about what those are today. First of all, one of their weak spots are that they are greedy. They are so greedy. And yes, I know you might not think that that is a weak spot, but it is. And especially in negotiations, because they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to stop themselves. And so there's a dance that happens in negotiations. There's a dance as to when to stop, as to when to know, okay, when is enough enough? When is it a good time to actually make the call to get the resolution done, to actually enter into the agreement so that all the parties can be happy and you can actually sign the agreement, and especially during litigation. And the reason I'm telling you this is because if you sign an agreement during litigation, then it is a contract. It is done. But all the parties are done. It is now bound by contract law. If you don't sign during a litigation and it proceeds to a trial of some sort, even if you win 100% of everything, the other side can appeal. That means that you can go on forever and ever and ever. Well, not really, but it kind of seems like that because appeals can take a long time. They're very, very expensive and hard to win. So it's really, really better if you can actually settle in a mediation or an arbitration or a dispute resolution setting. And the fact that narcissists are so greedy is actually a weak spot for them. So that's number one. They are greedy, huge weak spot for them. Number two is they are jealous. They're so jealous. They covet everything about people. They're super insecure, and that makes them super weak because they look over at people. They feel like, why do they have this? Why do they have that? Who deserves that? I deserve this. So they can never be happy, for one thing. And it also makes them weak. It exposes them to all sorts of weaknesses. The people who are happy for other people are way stronger, way more powerful than the people who are constantly looking at other people. I always say, like, the people who are running their own race are way more powerful than the people who are like looking behind them constantly. That slows you down, right? I mean, you know how when you're running a race and you're looking behind you to see who's like behind you, that does slow you down. And that's what happens with narcissists. They're constantly looking to see what's going on and surveying to see what's happening. And that really, really does slow them down. And so their jealousy does slow them down. And that is definitely a weak spot for them. So that's number two. They are so jealous. All right. Number three, another weak spot of theirs is that they just don't see other people's points of view. They have absolute blinders on. They have no ability to see anybody's points of view other than their own. And of course, this is a huge weak spot when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to having conversations with people, when it comes to being open to any kind of resolution. Because obviously, if you want to get anything done, if you want people to feel like they matter, I wrote a whole book on this, Negotiate Like You Matter. You want people to feel like they're being seen and heard, because that makes things much more likely to move forward. Then you should be able to see other people's points of view. And the fact that they don't have that ability is definitely a weak spot for them. And they don't even realize what a weak spot it is for them. And, they tend to lie all the time. I did a whole video, by the way, on what happens when you catch a narcissist in a lie. And they lie about everything, even things they don't need to lie about, which is very, very puzzling to me, by the way. I don't even understand that at all. But that's what happens. Anyway, you can definitely check out that video if you'd like. So that was number three. Number four is they cannot take criticism at all of any kind. I always joke that narcissists hear tones in people's voices like dogs hear whistles. Like, even if there's like no tone at all, you're just saying something, they hear tone. I mean, they're hyper, hyper, hyper sensitive because they have no sense of self. They have no inner sense of value. So they're very, very thin skinned people. I mean, they definitely are those people that can never take a joke. That old saying, like, they can dish it out, but they can't take it. That is so definitely them. They can never take criticism. They can never like learn from their mistakes. They can never take even like criticism that might be good for them, like feedback that may be good for them, that might actually help them. So obviously that is a weak spot of theirs because, it might actually help them to improve. So that is the next one, number four. Number five is that they are just paranoid. I mean, they think that people are after them all the time, even when people aren't. They just think people are against them constantly. They see the world as black and white. They see the world as people are for them or against them. And if they're not for them, then they must be against me. And if this person isn't on their side, then they must be their enemy. They live in this world of friends and enemies and absolutes constantly. And everybody believes this or no one believes that. And it's a very, very soul sucking environment. And if you believe that they're just complete soul suckers, give me a soul suckers in the comments below. Aren't they just like complete soul suckers? I know when I was dealing with it, that's how I felt, like just like energy sucking all the time. So that's number five. And number six is one of their biggest weak spots is that they're liars. And I am telling you, I know you guys don't think that this is a weak spot. It is a huge weak spot. And this is something that you can definitely use as leverage when you are going to negotiate with them. And it is a huge thing that I tell people all the time when you're creating your strategy, when you're creating your leverage, when you're creating your whole negotiation strategy. I talk about this in my Slay program a lot, but you can definitely use this against them. They're huge liars. It's a compulsion for them. And it is something that they will not think that you will be able to pick up on and pick up on the patterns and actually use it against them. But for sure, it's a huge weak spot for them. All right, so let's learn about narcissists in this video and how they teach you about who they are from their body language. So, did you know that what we say is actually only 7% of our communication? That's right. Tone of voice, tone of voice is actually 38% of our communication. And body language, body language is the other 55% of what we actually say. So when we are expressing ourselves, more than half of what we say is coming from our body language. So that means when we are listening or watching narcissists, they're saying a lot from their body language. All right, so I've got 6 telltale signs. So grab your notepad, grab your pen. You are not going to want to miss out on these 6 telltale signs. And I'm going to do them in reverse order from number 6 to number 1 so that you stay tuned all the way till the end. Ready? Let's go. Number 6. Number 6 is they have trouble making eye contact with people. They don't look up. They don't look at you. They have trouble while they're talking to you actually looking at you. Now, I know that a lot of you are from other cultures. Sometimes this is a cultural thing. So you do have to take into account different cultures. Sometimes it's actually disrespectful to look at people in the eye, depending on the culture that they're in. So do take that into account as well. Sometimes people are fearful of others as well. So you do have to kind of look at this as a whole before all the haters come rushing in. Just make sure that you do understand that you do have to look at this as a whole. Okay. So that's number 6. You ready for number 5? All right. Number 5 is that they're just not interested in new people in general. They just, they kind of like disinterested in even meeting new people. And I don't, they can't get themselves to like get up off the couch. They can't get themselves to come over unless the person can do something for them. Then maybe they're animated, right? They're in a situation where maybe a new person comes into the room, or maybe they come into the room and there's other people there that they haven't met before, and they just really don't want to meet new people unless, maybe they can do something for them. And again, you have to kind of take all of these as a whole, because of course there are people out there that might have social anxiety or, have other issues, right? But this is just kind of taken together. Got it? Okay. So that's number 5. Number 4. Number 4 is much more subtle. Number 4 is just that silent resentment. And I've been there. I have felt this. There's this silent resentment when their target, that person that they're with, that person, it might be your spouse, it might be your business partner, it might be that person, but the one who's like that target, the person that they're dealing with right now, it's probably you who's watching because you're the one who's watching, is interacting with other people. So you are in a social situation and you're enjoying yourself and you're feeling that silent resentment. They are so upset with you because you're having fun, because you're talking to other people. They cannot stand the fact that you are interacting with others. You know that later on you're going to pay for it. And this is the kind of thing that they do like at holidays, especially. And by the way, I have a whole video on why narcissists ruin holidays. And if you want to check that out, you can definitely check that out because, this is like one of the things, and you just kind of feel that underlying sort of seething. And you might get like these little like quips, you might get these little like comments, these little like subtle devaluing, like, oh, why do you got to go do and say that? Or how come you're eating that way? Or why do you look like that? Who are you talking to? Or they don't want to hear about that. There's like these little things that are happening. And so that you feel this silent sort of resentment, going on there. Okay. So that's number 4. You ready for the next one? All right. So the next one is that they're just like closed off, right? They're just closed off, maybe like folded arms, maybe like sitting away from others. Maybe they're like facing the door. They're just like disinterested to show others that they're not interested in you. I mean, a lot of times, by the way, if you want to know if an agreement is going to stick, you should look to see how somebody is facing, because if they're looking at you but they're facing toward the door, they're not necessarily engaged with you. They might be kind of half out the door. They might be sort of like not really actually committing to whatever it is that they may even be saying that they're committing to. And then down the road, you might find that that agreement didn't actually hold together and didn't actually stick. And you're wondering why, because they said that they would, and that's why, because you didn't read the body language. You didn't know to read the body language that they weren't actually sticking. So if you see that they're closed off, or you see that they're sitting and facing away like that, that might show that they're kind of narcissistic or not actually engaged in the situation. Okay. So that's the next one. And if I'm on track so far and you've seen some of these, give me an on track in the comments below. All right. Next one is, I know you guys have seen this too. I have definitely seen this from narcissistic people. They actually ask you a question, like you're in a social situation, and they say, oh, how did you come to have this happen to you? Or how is it going with your business or whatever? And you start to answer them, and then they don't even listen for your answer. You're halfway through the sentence and they're like, off, doing something else, or they see someone else. They don't even say, excuse me. They leave, they start looking at their phone, and they're not engaged. Like they don't even care enough to hear the rest of what you're saying. And, maybe a better source of supply came along, or whatever. And there you are. You're just sort of like, oh, yeah, well, never mind then. That's, another one. Like they're just kind of like inconsiderate. Especially if a better source of supply comes along. So that's the next one. And if you want to know what number 1 is, you got to make sure you stick with it. Ready? Ready for number 1? Okay. Number 1 is they often have more of a distance. They keep a distance. They actually have more physical proximity than others do in conversation. And again, sort of like the trouble with making eye contact, you do want to take into account different countries, different cultures, because obviously certain cultures stand closer than others. So you do want to think about that. But if you are in the same culture and you kind of know what the social norms are in your particular culture, narcissistic people do tend to stand a little further away from each other than other people do. So, those are some telltale signs of narcissistic body language.